We got that.
They have them at Walmart.
Same thing.
Good morning and welcome to Faith Family United Church of Christ Bible study. We are in Luke and we're doing what is called Studies in Luke. We are in lesson 6.1. I had to take the lessons and break them down because we're going into depth into each of the stories, and we're trying to make sure that we understand the story and how we apply it to our lives. I think that's what we're doing here for the most part. And we're actually going along pretty well. We're going to back up a little bit. Last week we talked about the feeding of the 5,000, and we touched a little bit on Peter's declaration about who Jesus was. Jesus is the Messiah of God, or the Christ of God. So we want to touch on that, and then we'll move on to Jesus foretells of his death and resurrection, starting in verse 21. So let's go.
Luke 9.
9,
That's right.
18.
Yeah, it's confusing just to point out that when you say lesson 6.1.
Yeah.
And you go, you gotta get it.
Yeah, we're in chapter 9, and we're starting at verse 18. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this. Once again, that Jesus is praying alone, and his disciples come up to him, and he asks them, who do people say that I am? Who do the crowds say that I am? And they, the disciples, answered, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others that you are one of the ancient prophets who has risen. So that's an interesting concept. Of course, we looked at Elijah, and Elijah, according to the Old Testament, Elijah never died, right? That's right. The chariot of fire came down and took him away. And then we also pointed out that some of the other prophets also ascended like this. And there's even a if you go to Moses, there's a extra biblical book that's not in on the ascension of Moses. And if you read in the Old Testament, it talks about Moses was no more, and it never says that Moses died. And so there's a idea there that Moses never died, that he also, like Elijah and some of the other prophets, were just taken up into heaven.
But later on, they're always talking about, he was talking to Moses, he was talking to Elijah, he was whatever. So he must have come back. Or
Who's he?
we're talking about,
Jesus?
they were talking about who is that vision that we saw, And then all of a sudden, he must be talking to Moses.
Yes. That's the next story that we're going to get to, the transfiguration. But here you go. They added John the Baptist to this, and that's interesting because we know that in the story just before the feeding of the 5,000, that Herod had beheaded John, and so the idea that John came back after he's was dead was a. What do you think about who the crowd said Jesus was?
Is this directed at the crowd or at the disciples?
Well, the Jesus asked the disciples, who does the crowd say? Who do the people say that I am? And it's interesting.
Who do the crowd say I am?
Yeah. John the Baptist.
Well, I most of them, I suspect, would say that he is a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Only a prophet.
Or is it certainly a great teacher?
Yes.
Oh.
Matter of fact, a lot of the people that come to him say rabbi, call him teacher or rabbi. So.
Well, they don't say Jesus who.
They don't say the Christ.
Well, they may not know him. They may not know of him even. They didn't have phones.
That's interesting that you point that out, that they thought he was a prophet. If you read in the Quran, that's exactly what the Quran says, that Jesus was a prophet.
Period.
Yeah. That's as far as they go.
Well, it's a revered prophet.
Mhm.
He's a revered
Oh,
prophet.
yes,
in the
yes,
Quran.
yes.
It's very high up. It's not just a prophet.
Which is interesting because I don't know lately, but if you study Islam through the years, Islam actually favored Christianity, if you were a Christian, over Judaism, if you were a Jew, you know, because they believed that Jesus was a prophet and that we followed this prophet like Muhammad. And so they favored the Christians over the Jews, where the Jews were kind of right at odds with them, but they still had the ancestor Abraham as their one ancestor.
Well, they were at odds with the Jews since their formation,
Yes.
almost. Although they accepted the Jews, but they were at odds with them because of political differences that they had.
What interesting is the Muslims didn't used to, I say that because I'm not sure about nowadays, but they didn't used to look at Christians and Jews as infidels. Does that make sense?
I don't think they do today.
Because we are known as the people of the book, talking about the Bible, so that we believe in God. Their God is Allah. That's what the name for him. Whereas, you know, we have different ideas about God, but still we believe in God, and so we're not considered infidels, which is unbelievers. So there's a difference.
The Jews and the Christians and the Muslims share Abraham.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so that's the reason.
Yes. So, anyway, so I wanted to talk about this again. On what does it say in your Bible? My Bible here says Peter answers him when Jesus says, "But who do you?" Now he's directing it at the disciples.
The Christ of God.
Who do you say? Yeah, the Christ of God. And I shake my head. Because of the New Revised Standard Version. It's a great translation, and they do wonderful things. But I do not understand why they took the word Christos, which is Greek for Christ, right, and translated it Messiah. And Messiah, of course, is the Jewish translation. Both words mean the anointed one. So it's like, but every place where it says Christ in the New Testament, the New Revised Standard decided to put Messiah there instead of the Christ. So I don't know. Maybe it was a way that they could say it's different from the old Revised Standard. But it's crazy because they do that, and so every time they do that, they have to put a footnote. In Greek, it says Christ. So it's like, why would you do that? Like I said earlier, I'm refreshing on my Hebrew, and one of the things about the Hebrew is when it was originally written, there are no vowels. It's all consonants. And later on, the Masoretics went and put little dots and little marks in the text. They just took the whole text and put dots, you know, like a dot under or a little T under or a consonant to give it a vowel sound. So when you read ancient Hebrew, you didn't have any vowels. You had to read it and actually know what the word was to say. And if you've ever tried that, you know, take English and take the vowels out and see if you can read it, you can pretty much understand it because that's the language that you speak. But people that were not of that language, it was hard for them. So they went and the Masoretics went and they put these little dots, and where you put the dot or the dash or a little T sign, whatever, that gave the vowel sounds. And Where was I going with
It
that?
converted the, I don't know, but it converted the noun into a verb.
Yeah, that is well too. But what I was going to say was,
That's by sight. It doesn't change how you read it.
no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because they were reading it before without the vowels in it, without those marks. But what they would do is you had to learn it. That's why you go to, when you do your bar mitzvah, you learn how to read, and they teach you what the words are. And so, when before they had the vowels and everything, when you would go to rabbinic school, they would teach you to read the whole Old Testament without those, and so you just had to learn what the word was and how to pronounce it.
Also, the words were not divided. They were written together.
Oh yeah, especially in Greek. In Greek,
If you look at the Septuagint, there was a scriptorium over at the display and on display over at Disney World, where they had the Jerusalem experience or whatever it was called. They had a scriptorium there that showed all the Bibles. They were facsimiles, but they showed the Bibles. And the writing of the ancient Greek that was of the original scripts that came there is written all in one sentence.
Yep.
Oh, and from right to left, not left to right.
Yeah.
All right, and so you
You
it's
wonder
New
how
York
they
Times
did.
crossword
No punctuation either. No periods, no commas. And
You're
we
kidding.
and
puzzle.
so
And tiny.
yeah. So and this is what I finally remember what I was going to say. So I'm going back to this idea that Messiah, how they had to change the word Christos, they changed it into Messiah, and then they have to put a footnote. Well, one of the reasons that the Masoretics did it the way they did it, so they didn't have to rewrite the whole Old Testament. And if you have to rewrite it, then you're liable to make a mistake copying it. So they just took the original and put the marks on there to teach you how to say that. Another thing is when they did rewrite when they copied some of the things, they would do what they called abbreviated or reduced spelling. In other words, to save ink, save paper space, they would write a word without, like for instance, a V sound or a O sound. Well, there's a V which is called a vav, which is just a line with a little top at the leaning top of it.
Like an R.
Yeah, like an R, but not a little bit abbreviated. And then you would put a dot above that, and that would be an O sound. Well, so to save ink, they just started leaving off the vav, the little R, and they would just put the dot up there. So that would save them that much ink and that much of a space. And then you see that, how they're so conservative on space or ink and paper, and here the New Revised Standard has to, first of all, they change the word, then they got to put a footnote. Now you got to write down in the footnote, you got to write another word, and so.
Well, it makes you think. It makes you think about your Bible. You have to choose one. Yes, it's got the right doctrine in it for the comments, but you have to choose the translation carefully.
Yes, yes, very much so.
If you want poetry, I say take the King James Version. I don't know what the best version is of the new ones.
They say one of the best versions, word for word, is the NASB, New American Standard Version, or the American Standard Version 1903. They say for word translation, that's probably the best. But because it's almost word for word, a lot of sentences don't make sense. because they did pretty much word for word translation.
Who were those people back in 19, or whatever it was? Who were these clergy people? Who were these?
They were scholars that understood the language, and they would get together, and a big committee of them would translate it, and they would bounce it back and forth across each other.
Were they one denomination?
No, not necessarily. Most of them are interdenominational.
The NIV is interdenominational.
Yeah. But I personally, that's why I like my little program I have here. I'll show it to you. And you can see up here across the top, there's the old NIV, there's the new NIV, here's the RS, New Revised Standard. And it's just, okay, so I read it in one and I say, I wonder what that word is. And so I look in one of the other ones to see how they translated. And a lot of times they're pretty close, but sometimes there's words that just, it's like, why did they do that?
Then if you want to go way into left field, bring in the Message.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the Reader's Digest condensed.
He tells you
It's
that.
just paraphrased.
Yeah,
It's
well,
just, you know.
He taught that the Bible was read so that you got a message. And he wrote one that amplified that theory. He said it was written for people to interpret what Christ was saying.
And here's a good example. You see, if I put on that right there, it says, or Messiah. See, they translated it Christ, but they said, or Messiah. But
The Greek word is Christos.
The Greek word is Christos.
What was the original Hebrew?
This was written in Greek.
In Greek.
Yeah. So, but you can see the word is Christos.
Luke was written in Greek.
Luke was written in Greek. So, anyway, so that's that.
Is that elsewhere in the Bible?
Where's that?
Where Peter says.
No. Yeah, it's in all the other Gospels, but all the Gospels are written in Greek. So, my suggestion is you get more than one version, not just one version. That way you can, if something doesn't make sense to you or you question what they're saying, you can look at another version and see.
But I come across so many people are so set in their ways. King James,
Yeah.
King James. And that's the way they were raised.
Yeah. And they
Bullheaded.
it's sad. It's sad. Okay, let's move on to the next story because we've been
Well, King James sufficed for a number of years.
yeah, well, and it was the reason why it was because it was in their language. That's how they spoke back then. And so it just and it was in English. And there wasn't very many English. And so America became, because of being English, that's the one that they picked up on. And for the longest time, everybody knew that. And it's like, if you know something, and now you change the words because it doesn't sound like how we talk, well, that's not the Bible. And I personally, I'm going to say this, I think that has caused so much problems with the idea of Christianity in America. Because you had the Bible, these, thous, thoses, and however they spoke, we don't speak that way. And now you've got the way we speak. And so what did you create?
Clash.
You created secularism and your Christianity. And the two were separated. You could be a Christian and at the same time you weren't, you could be a secular person. And this idea of two worlds, living in two worlds. When you read the Bible and you talked about the Bible, you went back to the Bible the way the Bible talks. But if you're in the world and you're talking just your normal way you talk every day, then you're not talking. You see what I'm saying? And so I think that caused that division. We should never divide ourselves into, oh, well, that's the secular world. No, that's the world we're supposed to live. We're supposed to be Christians all the time.
You're describing my relatives when I was a kid to the T. I mean, if it wasn't the Methodists way of doing things, that was it.
I see this all the time because I'm be out and I'll be working with people and doing manual labor, and somebody will get and they'll drop a cuss word and then realize that I'm there. And oh, sorry. I was like, so if I wasn't here, would you have apologized to everyone else? Right? So it's not, it's like I understand that you get frustrated and you do that kind of stuff, but you don't get to separate the two. This is who you are. This is who you are when you're thinking about being in the church, and this is who you are when you're not in the church. So you know, you need to bring them two together and not try to keep them at arm's length. And I think that idea of a Bible that doesn't speak the language that we speak today, it separates the two, and I think it's a bad thing.
It's difficult.
Okay, so
by the way, it appears in Matthew 16.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is Nathaniel is Nathaniel, right?
Mark.
Okay, that's Mark. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that
Mark
was it.
8:27.
Huh.
So, but you know what doesn't? Jesus doesn't, or Peter doesn't announce it in John. Isn't that interesting?
John does.
Where's that?
The one I have here, John, is attributed to John. John 1:49. Rabbi, you're the Son of God, but Nathaniel declared it.
John 1:49.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, he says that to when he goes and tells
John says it many times because the woman in Samaria and Peter's second confession.
yeah, but Peter doesn't say it in John.
And Martha.
Okay, so, but we have this idea that Jesus is the Messiah, and that's one of those things like we were talking about, earlier. What does that mean? And if you'd asked them back then, it meant a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The idea of you are the anointed one. So, and I think that I kind of answer my question here. So we start out in the next story, and it says, Jesus sternly ordered and commanded them not to tell anyone, saying that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be risen. And the question there is, why did Jesus tell them not to tell anyone?
He knew they'd tell anyway.
No, I think it's Jesus is not ready. He's not ready to face the cross yet.
Okay.
He is the director of this passion that is being played out,
Yes.
and he's following God's orders, and God says, not yet. It's like that ad on television for selling your car or whatever it was, woman saying, not yet, not yet. Well, it's not yet.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
And why do you think it's not yet? And this is my main reason why I think that he says it. Why do you think it's not yet?
He's got more to do. He's got more teaching to do.
Okay. So what happens if people come to this understanding that Peter did, that you are the Christ, you are the anointed one of God? What would happen?
If the people come to that,
Yeah.
chaos.
Chaos. Once again, like I said, some people say the Christ is the anointed one of God is going to bring in a military revolt, like others say he's going to change the whole idea of the way we do religion. Others say that he's going to be. So you got all these different people, and so he says, don't tell them yet, because then what happens? Some want to come and make him king. Others want to come in and make him a military leader. Others want to come in and just do nothing but let him be the guru. And so he says, not yet.
It's significant that he says it,
Yes.
because it means that he's going to tell you when, and actually he doesn't tell them when.
No, because they have to, not only the disciples, but the people themselves have to see this play out to the end. And then they can say, they can say for themselves, not you telling me, but they can see for themselves.
Well, Jesus knows what the people think.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
He knows what they think, but he's going to give them something different.
That's good. Okay, so.
Well, that's true too. The people would misread it if
Oh,
you told them that now.
Oh yeah. And so that's, I think that's a good reason, that he had to say. And I like the way you said that, Bill. Not yet. not that we're not going to do it, but don't tell them yet, because they have to experience something first. Okay. And then in 23 it says, if anyone wants to become my follower, let them deny themselves and take up the cross and follow me. That loses its meaning completely to us today.
Why?
What do you think that means?
Exactly what it says. That you have to commit yourself to walking with Jesus.
Okay,
100%.
100%.
And that is impossible.
But he chooses a word that was anathema, a word that you didn't want to hear, you didn't want to see, you didn't want to. The word is cross. What was the cross to them?
Crucifixion.
It's a death sentence.
Yeah.
End of life.
That's right. So if we were to put this into today's words, we wouldn't use the word cross. We would use maybe take up your electric chair and follow me, or take up your.
Who tell them to give up your life?
Yeah. Be ready to give up your life if you're going to follow me. Wow, that's some powerful words.
People don't want to hear that.
No, and we hear this. We hear this. Oh, my aunt. She's a little giddy and she's kind of hard on me, but that's my cross to bear. Is that a cross to bear? And no, that's just you being discomforted. A cross to bear means you put your life on the line for doing the right thing, and that's what it says there. I think that goes back to a little bit of our discussion on is civil disobedience or breaking the law, the government law. Is that something that is allowed? And Jesus is like, if you're doing what's right,
Do it.
yeah, wholeheartedly. So I'm always concerned about the idea of cross, how we just throw it around. We wear cross necklace, cross little earrings, and talk about taking up our cross. Oh, that's my cross to bear, and we use it so lightheartedly, but yet it's a really harsh thing to come to. And I think that's why the next verse says, those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will save it. And I think that's important to realize, to put those two together and to see it's talking about losing your life for doing what's right, for believing that this is the kingdom that's to come.
He's going to give, well, I don't know, Luke, I can't tell where Luke is drawing from, but he's going to give us the commandment. Well, Luke had to know about it at this point, I think. So, they're going to give us the great commandment to go out and proselytize for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's saying here, if you do that, you're probably going to lose your life,
Mm-hmm.
but you won't. Is this the first reference to life after death in the Bible?
Does it necessarily need to be after death?
Well, it doesn't have to be, and you and I agree with that, but the implication is that you die and get saved.
Okay.
Is this the first reference to it
No, it's not.
in the New Testament?
No.
Okay.
But here we go. Is it actually saying that? Think of it this way. I'm a wealthy person, and I use I don't want to say use. My company exploits people, gives them low wages, and so I'm making lots of money off of these people. Do I see that it's wrong? Well, when I become a Christian, I do. And I want to change that. Have I lost my life? The life that I had, the wealth, I want to make a world where people are equal and get paid for an honest day's work for an honest day, or honest day pay for an honest day's work. You know, instead of the rich living off of the poor and making money off that. So that's kind of like losing your life. And this idea, and we talked about this before we started, this idea of being saved, is it, oh, we're dead and we're go to heaven? Is that being saved? Or in the Old Testament, the idea of being saved was a communal thing. It was the nation was being saved. And think about that. If everybody were to have that kind of mindset, if everybody would change their lifestyle to be a lifestyle more of a egalitarian lifestyle, everybody's equal, everything is distributed equal, you know, wouldn't our whole world be saved?
Sure,
So there's...
Yeah, the idea is right, but that's not what he's saying here.
You don't think so?
No, I think, but whoever loses his life for me
Mm-hmm.
will save it. So if you lose your life for him, that's dying.
You think it's dying?
In this day and age, when he's preaching right now, that's dying.
I don't agree with you.
Right.
I can say, and then I say this, I'm going against tradition.
Tradition?
Yeah, because what you're saying is the traditional understanding of this.
Well, how does your book translate that?
Those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will save it. It
could be interpreted either way.
What does it profit them if they gain the whole world but lose or forfeit themselves? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words, of them the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when comes his glory and the glory of the Father.
And you say this was said before by somebody in the Bible.
What's that?
In other words, this wasn't the first time that Christ said this.
About afterlife? Yeah. I just think we approach it from the wrong point of view. That to be saved is when we die and we go to heaven. Why are we not talking about the kingdom of heaven? That's the very last saying on verse 27. But why aren't we trying to live that here on earth? And that will save not the individual, but all of humanity. And I think that's where we need to. That's the focus of the new church.
It also says they will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God.
And so what does
So
that
that
say?
reinforces your position.
That means that the kingdom of God came before the death.
Or that the kingdom of God is here on earth and you're.
Exactly. Okay, we're gonna have to stop there, a couple minutes over. Next week, I'm glad we didn't go into the next story, because the next story is the Transfiguration, and that's a deep
Just
one.
a snap.
Oh yeah. So we'll go over the Transfiguration next week. That's chapter 9, verses 28 through 36. All right, thank y'all. And my camera person, run off on me.
You said that was lesson 9?
No, that's chapter 9.
Chapter 9.
You don't have